So now I'd like to return to that field work that I bracketed to discuss from furnace to mine and go through basically what I imagine as the layout or trajectory of the middle mineral and the mine. Right? These are all works in progress. So the first chapter I'd like to talk about is chapter 2, Slinging Batch, embodying the cool rocks of hot glass. So this is me. I work there learning to quote unquote sling batch, slinging batch. I love this expression, is the actual mixing of the batch that comes in those ubiquitous 50-pound bags that show up in our studio. Because of silica and the risk of silicosis, right? You're wearing masks to prevent breathing the particulates. There are numerous stages of this process. So the first part is filling the hopper. Part of this research in doing it is not only learning how to mix batch, but also developing a sense for the materials. So I worked with Doug here, who was amazing, took me around, taught me everything there is to know about glass making. We would fill up that hopper, which is the main ingredient, right? Go to the middle mineral station, which is the soda ash, potassium, other things like this. Go to the small mineral station where you have fluorspar, lithium, other things like this. Finally, all of this gets mixed in the hopper and it goes into this wheel, which is a precious item of studio glass blowing history. The agglomerator, it's called, designed and built in-house by Harvey. So it's really an amazing piece of equipment that's still used today and is very, very special. This is the actual slinging batch. It comes down from the red hopper into the yellow, gets mixed with water so that it's a quote unquote agglomerated, which is not quite pelletized, right? It's not like a clear pellet, but agglomerated, and it goes down the conveyor belt into the batch bags, is sealed up as you see in the foreground here, and shipped out. So when you're slinging batch like this, I have to tell you, it's extraordinarily satisfying. And this is for someone coming from, the furnace and writing a whole book called Firecraft and being completely obsessed with fire. But when I had the hands in there doing it, it was like meeting someone new who you had known for a long time. What can embodying this process of working with minerals, what insight can it lend to understanding glass making, right? Going back to those same questions, bodily knowledge, materiality, social bonds, communities, settler-colonialism. What new insights can I gain through working with these raw materials, right? We already saw the one in case of the history, but what about this? And specifically connected to that mine that we saw in Appalachia, can I understand the craft of terraforming clear through the bagging of the minerals more deeply, right? And what can that tell me about studio craft art and practices? The one thing about the batch company, and this is a problem that I am very curious to pursue, and that's the question of beauty. I have to tell you that being in a cloud of silica is pretty amazingly beautiful. And it causes silicosis, right? So I'm thinking here about going back to intracorporeality. Stacey Alamo has a concept called transcorporeality, and she actually looked at silica miners and how they develop silicosis. So what are the systems of power and privilege that allow for aesthetics and beauty, but can cause illness and death? And how can I walk that double-edged sword or negotiate the contradiction? And what can it tell me about our practices as studio glass blowers? One important part of this story, and it's related to Doug, who was my mentor, who took me through the silica hopper, the middle station, and the small mineral station, is that his father was also a miner, and he worked jackhammering feldspar. Again, the unknown presence of silica, and his father passed away in his 60s from silicosis. So the way I open this chapter is in part the beauty of the silica cloud and Doug's story and the making of glass. So Doug himself is working with silica, negotiating his father's own premature death. Then I dial out to the accounts of miners who are working with silica and how they negotiate risk. And again, this is all just to enrich and develop the story. We can still tell human stories, but we can make them more than human and then maybe become better humans in the process by including these other narratives, whether they're historical or contemporary. Chapter 3, Minerals on the Move, Connecting Global Glass Chains, is getting out of the primary ingredients of glass: silica, soda ash, lime. Minerals on the Move, I get into some of the more minor, quote unquote, minerals: erbium, cobalt, fluorspar, barium, lithium, antimony. And then what I want to do is connect again, getting out of the hot shop. I want to think about the geopolitics that are connected to any one of these minerals. So it's not only like mapping, okay, they came from here, but what are the geopolitics and how does that change over time? So there's two minerals that I've done preliminary research on. One is lithium, looking at its move from North Carolina to Nevada. In Nevada, it moves from a quarry technique of mining, right? Like actually getting it out of the rock, to salts where it's evaporated. This is something to pay attention to today, given the recent presidential vault project, right? Which is looking at onshoring minerals again in the United States. In Nevada, we see court cases regarding water pollution and the mining of lithium, notably in relation to indigenous groups and communities. It offshores even more into Chile. And here you had Pinochet opening markets, wanting to nationalize resources. And then the other case, antimony, which is a traditional mineral that you can see even in medieval hand illuminated texts about metallurgy. This is sourced primarily in China at this point. But going back into the archives, you can already see how geopolitics inserts itself into the sourcing of antimony. Here, it's a letter from a company, they have economic problems in Russia. It was the fall of the Soviet Union. People are looking to China. Now tariffs have been applied and the price is skyrocketing. Does any of this sound familiar, right? So there's this whole geopolitical history that's intertwined with what minerals we use and how we source them, and what type of lithium, say it is in any instance, or antimony it is in any instant. How does that animate a trajectory or a type of batch or style of batch in a specific way? And what are the geopolitics of it? There's the material agency to it, but there's also a geopolitical story. Where does it come from and how? And I think it just behooves us as people of the world to be familiar with these stories.
Thanks for checking out this GEEX Shorts episode. This is just one of 10 chapters featuring the speaker's artwork, artistic practice, and direct conversations with the community. The full-length video, only publicly available for a limited time, can be found in the GEEX Talk subscriber archive, where you can also discover hours of content on even more contemporary glass artists and researchers. As a BIPOC and artist-led organization, GEEX redefines the culture of contemporary glass by canonizing artists and thinkers who have been historically marginalized in the field. If you'd like to support this effort, subscribe to GEEX and gain access to exclusive content. For more info, visit geeks.glass/support.